Hi everybody, here's Krystian from Team Cast. I'm here with a new kind of series I wanted to try out. I wanted to have a series about Netrunner cards where I will be, in each episode, I will be talking about one individual card. I've seen a lot of people doing like reviews of entire card packs that recently just came out, and I think that's a very good idea. But one thing that kind of bothers me that we never go back to all the old cards that have become kind of like established entries in Netrunner, and nobody goes back to those cards to explain if they were really, if our first impressions of those cards were really accurate, and how the kind of experiences that you collect by playing all those different cards. So in each episode, I want to be talking about one card that everybody is playing, or maybe nobody is playing, but that one that is kind of old that we in the Netrunner community have experience with. Maybe something also interesting for newcomers coming in, wanting to learn about the staples, the standard staples cards that everybody's using in their decks, or maybe should be using for some reason. Anyway, but today I'm going to be talking about one of the actual very, very popular and very famous cards, which is Biotic Labor. Now you get Biotic Labor in the core set, so it's highly likely that you already own it. Biotic Labor is used in a lot of decks, and it's actually used in a lot of very successful decks. And what it does, it is a operation by Biotic HB. It costs 4 credits, and it has very, very simple effect. It just says gain 2 clicks. So you spend 1 click to play it, but you get 2 clicks. So in total you get 1 click. It has 4 influence, so it's actually very difficult to splash in other factions, but it is actually splashed quite often in a lot of factions. It is a very, very common tool for so-called fast advance. So talking about the flavor for a while here, so this is the image shows us here like 2 bioroids, like robotic humans sent by Bioroids as kind of like a temporary workers, and they kind of join your corporation here for a turn to accelerate everything that you're doing, so allow you to score through an agenda. And those bioroids, for some reason, they kind of, like people say, they seem a little bit like Fox Mulder and Diana Scully from the X-Files. They have been turned into robots in the future, apparently. And there is a nice, very, very long Bioroid blurb at the bottom talking about efficiency and how savings are passed on to their valued customers. So yeah, Bioroid giving you the German efficiency that you need. And the idea behind fast advance is that you basically have an agenda that costs 3 points to advance, 3 advancement tokens to advance. And you use some kind of fast advance trick to play this agenda on your turn and actually score it all the way through without the runner having an opportunity to run on the agenda. So with a fast advance trick like Biotic Labor, you would be able to get 4 clicks in a corporation's turn. That was enough to 1, install it, and then advance it 3 times to score accelerated beta test all the way through. There's a lot of 3-2 agendas in the game. Actually, at each corporation has a 3-2 agenda. So technically each faction is able to fast advance. So Biotic Labor is actually one of the tools that you can use to do this. This one is from HB, and BN has actually 2 different tools. It has ESCO pilot program, which allows you to advance something without spending a click. And you have Sense and City Grid, which lowers the advancement cost by 1. And then later on, Jinteki the data pack got a Trick of Light, which allows you to move 2 advancement tokens from one card to another with just 1 click. So this also allows you to fast advance. Now, compared to the other tricks, Biotic Labor is actually quite interesting because it doesn't have to be used for fast advance. And in fact, a lot of newcomers are actually confused about what this card is good for. And I've heard like a lot of newcomers, include it in their decks and say something like, oh, maybe I can play it 1 turn and install 1 additional ice or something. But of course, this is probably not a good idea because it is very, very expensive. So if you really want to install a lot of ice, there's much cheaper opportunities to do so. Fast Advance is probably the main idea to use Biotic Labor with. The huge advantage of Biotic Labor is that it doesn't have to be set up in any kind of way. So unlike Trick or Flight, for example, you don't have to have any kind of advancement tokens in play already, or unlike Sands and City Grid, it doesn't have to survive a turn in the server. And like AstroScript Pilot Program, it doesn't have to be scored previously. You just need 4 credits. And of course, the credits to score the agenda all the way through. Now, the reason why I want to talk about Biotic Labor is that I think it makes a very good point against a specific practice that I see a lot of experienced netrunners kind of like focus on very much, which is kind of like to mathematically calculate the efficiency of each and every individual card. You've probably seen this if you're active online on Reddit or Board Game Geek, where people break down cards down to, how many clicks it costs in total, how many clicks you get out of it, how much money you get out of it per click that you invest in it, and stuff like that. So, for example, you take something like the good old hedge fund and you go like, all right, so it's 1 click to draw it, 1 click to play it. So we already paid 2 clicks and you get a total of 4 clicks out of it, 4 credits out of it. So it's basically 2 credits per click that you invest in it. And that's fine and dandy, except if you do this with Biotic Labor, it turns out that Biotic Labor mathematically is the worst possible card ever. So let us count very quickly. So you pay 1 click to draw it, you pay 1 click to play it, you spend 4 credits, and then you get your 2 clicks that you invested in it back. So basically, the card allows you to spend 4 credits and you get nothing out of it. Yay! But obviously, all netrunners know that this is actually a very, very good card that is very successful in many tournament-winning decks. So why are people playing this card if it's mathematically so horrible? I think there's 2 answers to this. One has to do with the term click compression, which I think is a term that is often used in a very confusing and very contradicting way. There's I think different understandings of what click compression means. Or maybe we shouldn't use click compression in this case, but maybe like click transfer or click carryover or something like this. Basically what I mean is that when you draw Biotic Labor, you spend that click on a different turn than the click that you gain back from this. So you basically carry over the click from one turn to another. A good example of this click compression or click transfer or whatever concept is maybe like this Shaper card, which nobody actually uses, but or at least I haven't seen it used very often. It's the all-nighter, and it's like a resource where you kind of spend a click to play it. You spend a click to draw it, you spend a click to play it, and then you can trash it with a click and to gain 2 clicks back. So basically you get all the clicks back to invest it in this card. And this allows you to make like this huge like very powerful turn with a lot of clicks in it. And it's kind of like Biotic Labor is like kind of very similar to this in some regard. So that would be kind of like a mathematical explanation for why this card is good. But I think that's basically just throwing math at a problem where math maybe not quite applies so well. I think that another explanation to this is that Netrunner is basically a very, very situational game where each card is only good within a specific context. This is actually something that Richard Garfield talked a lot about in different interviews, how he designed Netrunner to be a game that kind of like avoids the mistakes or problems that he noticed when designing Magic the Gathering. One of the issues with Magic the Gathering is that there is a lot of power creep where you get cards which are basically the same card but just stronger. And that made sense in a game where you would get random cards in a pack. And, to get the stronger cards were rarer, so more difficult to get and stuff like that. So you have to make cards more and less valuable inherently. In Netrunner, and especially in the new LCG Netrunner, I think there is a certain effort by the designers to make the cards not as easily comparable. So it's not as easy to see which card is just better or worse. So they're trying to make it difficult to break down cards mathematically like this. And I think a lot of cards turn out to be cards which are situationally good or bad. You kind of have to think about this. What happens if you play Biotic Labor like on your last click on the same turn that you actually drew Biotic Labor? You get like, okay, you get 2 clicks and then you like click for money for those clicks. That would be horrible, right? So if that's all you can do with the clicks, obviously Biotic Labor is horrible. But as we already said before, Biotic Labor is often used to score through an entire agenda. So in a situation where you have an agenda on your hand and that agenda can be actually scored through all the way through, and it gives you a huge advantage of this agenda not being run on during runner's turn, those 4 credits turn out to be actually much more valuable than just the mere, amount of clicks that you get from those 4 credits. So I don't want to be harping too much about this mathematical breakdown. I think doing this kind of efficiency analysis is a very valuable thing, a very important tool in your toolbox to think about Netrunner, thinking about strategies in this specific game. But I think an important takeaway here is that it shouldn't be your only tool. You should be also thinking about other things rather than just the mathematical efficiency, click efficiency when you talk about cards. In some cases, it may be very, very valuable to also think about the general context in which things are happening, to think maybe sometimes purely in the best possible scenario, because a lot of cards are never played outside the best case scenario, as in Biotic Labor is probably never played outside of a case where you score out an agenda all the way through, and in that case it becomes just 4 credits to get a 2-point agenda, which in case of accelerated beta test, it may completely change the board state. In case of AstroScript pilot program, it may basically start your entire Astro train and win you the entire game in the end. And who knows, maybe in the future, Biotic Labor will be useful for other things as well, not just scoring through agendas through. The cool thing about Biotic Labor is that compared to the other fast advanced tricks, it's quite universal. You just get clicks, and there's all sorts of things that you could be doing with those clicks. Of course, again, because Biotic Labor is quite expensive, so far it doesn't pay off to be using it for anything else rather than just fast advancing. But who knows, maybe in the future we find other uses for it. So that's it for today. Again, play Biotic Labor, and also make sure that you don't focus too much on the efficiency of cards. Sometimes it's very important to think about the context. Hack the planet!